Well, that happened. I don't know really what to think about that. Seems like it's one of those. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say it's like Leonard Hagler, but it seems like this fight, Taylor and Serrano, has unfortunately split the boxing community. And I'm going to be saying some things that are going to piss some people off and triggering some people. And at the end of the day, I don't care because I got to, I'm going to call it like I see it, straight down the middle, because that's how the show works. I'm not soft touching nothing because some of the responses, man, I don't, and I can see a certain segment and where they're coming from and why they're saying what they're saying because I don't think they believe what they're saying. So let me get this in this. Now, of course, Katie Taylor gets her hand raised against Amanda Serrano. Some people are calling it, like a fight of the year candidate. I didn't see a fight of the year candidate. I saw a really good fight. I didn't see a fight of the year candidate. I didn't see something that just stood the test of time if I just looked at it that way. What you did have is you had two, as I said in the preview, two women at the top level, and they went after it. Katie Taylor, arguably, I don't know what it is. I said before that it feels like she's doesn't have confidence in herself. And in the fight, it did seem like there were moments where she dropped confidence, but then she gained it back. So I think the platform, the forum, where they were at, stood out, and she went in, and ultimately she knew she had to go to war at points because she wasn't going to convince anybody outside of the UK that she was superior unless she decided to go to war and prove some things. I'm going to say, though, if this were two men fighting, okay, if we had two guys, I know it's hard because it's Madison Square Garden. It's the two women that are making history headline in MSG. It's two top women in their division. It's titles. I got you. But if this were two men in there, now we have to do some equations here. Going by power, so just going off power equivalency. Katie Taylor, in terms of power, is essentially what, like Sebastian Formella level. That's what I see with Katie Taylor, is Sebastian Formella. If she were the equivalent on the guy side, Sebastian Formella. If you haven't watched Sebastian Formella fight, I recommend you do because you're going to see what I'm talking about. That's what I see. That's not to say skill. I'm talking in terms of power. I'm talking in terms of your ability to make your opponent respect your power. That's where Katie Taylor is. My equivalency is Sebastian Formella. On the Amanda Serrano side, the equivalency I see is Conor Benn. In terms of power, don't sit there and come back. It's about skill, deep. I'm talking power equivalency. Now, go and watch Conor Benn versus Sebastian Formella. In this fight, what you saw was Conor Benn was basically teeing off on Sebastian Formella, teeing off on him. Sebastian Formella, I call him Man Bun, is tough as nails. He took the best Porter gave him. He took the best Conor Benn gave him, and he never went down. This dude is tough. He's tough. That's what I see when I watched the fight was Conor Benn and Sebastian Formella, essentially. Now, in terms of the sequences, the outcome, especially the last round, but the sequence outcome caused me to recall Chris Algieri versus Ruslan Provodnikov, where you got one guy who's arguably the better boxer who goes in there and he's doing what he does, but we can't ignore the fact he's getting wrecked at points. So now I'm watching this and I'm seeing people's responses online. And there's this swath of extreme. There's a couple of people who are in the center, but there's a swath of extreme. There's people who swear up and down it was a robbery. Even some pro boxers saying it was a robbery. And I commented one of those on social media. And then on the other side, it's no, it wasn't a robbery. Taylor, quote, clearly won. I'm going to say this from what I saw. There's no way that anybody should be saying that Katie Taylor, quote, clearly won the fight. If you want to say that It was a toss up, could have gone either way type deal. If you want to say that you'd be okay with Serrano winning a close one, if you want to say that, yes, we saw Taylor getting wrecked, all of those are acceptable outcomes. Saying that Taylor clearly won is not an acceptable outcome. And the people saying that are either biased because it's two women or they're biased because it's Katie Taylor. It can only be one of the two. Because what I saw was Katie Taylor's head getting smashed back like a Pez dispenser on multiple occasions. What I saw was Katie Taylor's knees buckle in the final sequence. What I saw was Serrano's punch landing square on Katie Taylor's face every time Taylor was drug into war. Does that mean that Taylor did not have spots of boxing brilliance? No, she did. But I go back. If this were two men in there, the narrative would have been who landed the harder punches. You see, you can do a search right now on any search engine on boxing forums across, and that's the narrative. Who landed the harder punches? Who was causing more damage as far as the punch, velocity, quote unquote. And yet, for some odd reason, when it's these two, all of a sudden that goes out the window. I'm sorry, I'm going to call that what it is. Let's make it even simpler. Mayweather-Pacquiao. Mayweather, arguably, in my eyes, he won 8 rounds of that fight. Many people, I think one of the judges even had him 10 rounds to 2. Blowout, as Floyd would say. But I had him winning 8 rounds. Mayweather won that fight not because he was landing significantly harder punches, but because he was clearly outboxing Manny. Period, point blank, Manny didn't show up. So in there, after the fight, people are saying, even Skip Bayless is like, pity pat jab is not enough, it's not enough to win the fight. Because there's been that narrative on the men's side that it's all about the harder punches landed. If you land the harder shots, the more telling shots, if you cause more damage, you should win the fight. That has always been the narrative on the men's side across the web. You can search it yourself. But when it's these two, we know Katie Taylor doesn't have the power. We know that her power was doing nothing to Person, and it was barely doing things to Serrano. All you saw was Serrano gas a little bit. She slowed down a little bit. She abandoned some strategy. She abandoned the body work at points. She tapered, certainly. But even after she tapered, her punches were snapping Katie's head back on a regular basis whenever Katie engaged. I'm saying, if you're in that group that says, you know what, I had it close for Katie Taylor, but she was getting bombed on. B, I had it close for Amanda Serrano, but she gassed. C, I had a draw. All 3 of those outcomes are acceptable. If you said Katie Taylor was getting, as they say, and I think this is a UK term, mollywopped. If you say that, that is acceptable. Those are the only 4 acceptable. I didn't see a robbery because I saw close because of the fact that Serrano tapered off. I'm okay with close. I'm okay with I could have it go either way. I'm okay with all that. When you start telling me that Katie Taylor won this fight, quote, clearly, I'm going to quote the late, great Uncle Roger Mayweather, you don't know shit about boxing because there's no clear. Stop using the word clear. Taylor did not clear win anything because if you were judging this fight the same way you judged the men, you would be basically saying Serrano got robbed if we were judging them pair for pair. Because Serrano is landing the harder shots by your own narratives. When it's the men, you say you're looking for harder punches. Okay, Serrano landed the harder punches, arguably the vast majority of the fight. I saw some people saying, well, Serrano only clearly won 3 or 4 rounds. Okay, that's fine. 3-4 rounds out of a 10-round fight, there's no way you can make this case that Taylor clearly won then. It's a 10-round fight, so maybe you're getting jacked because you assumed 12. Okay. I don't know what it's going to take for people to understand it's different. The women only got 2 minutes per round. They only got, I'm pretty sure it was 10-round fight. Okay, you only got 20 minutes to get some work in. If you're telling me that you can see 4 rounds for Amanda Serrano in this fight, 4 rounds to 6, if you didn't see where Taylor's getting wobbled, rocked, damn near knee touch, all that, and you didn't give you can't see any situation where Serrano gets that fifth round. I'm sorry, I can't give it to you, bro. I can't give it to you. The last narrative, Katie was given as good as she was getting. No, she was not. No, she was not. When Katie was about to knee buckle, that's not giving as good as you can get. No, it's not. The analogy I made around that last sequence, the very final sequence, if you thought that Katie Taylor clearly got the better of Serrano in that last sequence, then you need to admit that Jeff Horn clearly beat Manny in the last sequence of theirs, because it was basically the same damn thing. Many of you, because you hate Jeff Horn, aren't going to say that, but it's, again, it goes back to my point. When it's women, you're changing the rules. When it's women, you're looking for boxing masterclasses, not looking for the harder punches. When it's the women and they only got 10 rounds to work with, things are jacking you where you're assuming that it's a wash when it's not, because there's only 10 rounds. Something's off. You're not equating pair for pair. You're not being fair, because Taylor did not clearly win shit. I'm sorry. She didn't clearly win anything. It's okay if you had Taylor winning a close fight, but she was getting, quote, mollywhopped. It's okay if you had Serrano winning a close fight, but she tapered off. It's okay if you saw a draw. All of these are acceptable. There is no other real acceptable other than that. Even robbery, I think, is not fair, because it's not like Serrano was dominant the entire fight, right? But I'm saying that if, from our eyes, when you look at the totality of everything, put it all together, Katie Taylor was getting her ass kicked. The punches being landed from Serrano on Taylor's face were making significant inroads toward an upset if she had kept it up. She couldn't keep it up for too long, and then I argue she took the last round. To me, I didn't see that Serrano only won the middle. No. Reminds me again of Teofimo and Lomachenko, where people swore that Teo clearly won the 12th, and then we posted up our video debunking that narrative, showing that no, he didn't clearly win a damn thing. It was close, and that's what it was. Anyway, Katie Taylor gets her hand raised, and she remains that unified champion. She remains that boss. There's apparently a rematch clause, and then the rematch will take place in Ireland. That worries me, not because I think, obviously the robbery risk, but that's not why. It's because I think in this fight there was enough to it to justify doing Madison Square Garden again. I think there was enough hype around it. I think that arguably both women delivered. But I also would have seen, and this is important, I also would have seen ideally that if I were Serrano, I'd have said, if I lose this, the rematch is going to be 12 rounds, and it's going to be 3-minute rounds, and it's going to be in Madison Square Garden again. Because I guarantee you, if you do 3-minute rounds, Katie Taylor doesn't get out of that. I think she got saved quite a bit by her skill. I think she got saved, and that's fine. But to me, I did not see this clearly narrative, no, at all. I saw that Taylor pulled skill, and in a close fight, got her hand raised. I would have leaned it towards Serrano, because I'm measuring it the same way I would measure the men, which is according to what the web does against the men, which is, okay, who landed the harder punches? Okay, by that narrative, I would give it to Serrano. If I were measuring it the way I would normally measure it, I would close lean it to Taylor. I would not say clearly any damn thing, because that's not the fight you saw. The only clearly fight you really saw was Shakur Stevenson in his master class, which I'll get to next.